Hi everyone, it's Katie from Chords Records. Interactive album covers. I'm not talking about lenticular, I'm not talking about pop-ups that are inside, I'm talking about the outside of the cover and things that are a little bit different about them. I absolutely love design, I love music, and bringing the two together is such a wonderful research project. So without further ado, I'm going to go probably through a dozen quite quickly, but I'm going to also talk about the designers, which I think is obviously really important when you're talking about the design of album covers. And the first one I'm going to feature, I'm going to do this chronological order, is this 1968 Papas and Mamas album cover by Gary Burden, by the Mamas and the Papas, a fantastic album. I've got a white label promo here, and this was the interactive face version, so you could open up the cover and a little bit of fun, you actually have a look at the different iterations of the faces, and then if you wanted to open them both up, that was the inside of the cover there. You can see the Mamas and the Papas there in all their absolute beauty. This is a fantastic album, kicking off with Dream, A Little Dream of Me. Absolutely beautiful. Shout out to Dylan. I got this in the Voice of America collection and it plays beautifully. So who was Gary Burden? Gary Burden was an amazing, one of the pioneers of interactive cover art. He did over his extensive career, did everything from a lot of Neil Young album covers like Harvest. He did Blue, Joni Mitchell. He did my favourites of Laura Nyro and Judy Sill, if you're familiar with my channel. He also, his main collaborator as far as photography goes was Henry Ditz. And if you know him, you know he was an amazing photographer from the LA era around this time, still alive. And I just wanted to share this beautiful original print I got off him in the last couple of years. This is from, I think, around about 1973, and that features the amazing artists. It says there Bonnie, Maria, and Linda, and of course it's Bonnie Raitt, Maria, what was her name? Maria Muldaur, and Linda Ronstadt. You know Bonnie Raitt and Linda Ronstadt, of course. You may not know Maria Muldaur. She had that famous 1974 hit, Midnight at the Oasis. So I just wanted to share that. So Gary Burden was a collaborator of Henry Ditz for many, many years. That's the first interactive cover. The next one, moving chronologically towards now, is this beautiful Bee Gees Odessa from 1969. This album is completely, they call it red velvet, but it was like a kind of a felt or a flock. I don't know if you can see it in the camera. It's kind of this textured, soft cover. They're very hard to get, that are pure. You can see kind of the ring marks of the albums had been stored in storage for many years, but apart from that, this album is in beautiful condition. The Atco label, the US version. And this was interesting. They had to stop making this. According to the book, the absolute music reference book, 1001 Albums You Should Hear Before You Die, they had to stop production of this kind of very soft feel cover because it was super expensive and it became untenable. As well, it had this kind of allergic impact on the manufacturing staff, so they stopped doing it. They're quite hard to find in good condition, and this because it all wears out. But beautiful album, 1969, Bee Gees Odessa. So the designer of this actually was just the album people. There was no kind of literal designer named to that introduced it was just the production. Beautiful. And it had this kind of gold sort of beautifully embossed gold writing. A beautiful, beautiful feel, a very tactile album cover. Right, the next one is the absolute classic 1971 Grammy Award winning Carpenters album. This album cover was actually designed by the in-house art director for A&M, who was Roland Young, and he was kind of the in-house art director for almost the entire of the 70s. And Craig Bourne was also aligned with this, and he designed the very famous Carpenters logo. So how does this work? So it's this fantastic kind of concept of this envelope that opens up like this, and then it's a top-loading album out of here. It's a little bit finicky, but still quite a fun little packaging design that, you know, just makes it. It was all the rage in the early 70s, and everyone was on board with it. It must have been a lot cheaper to manufacture. You see it now, but in very limited quantities. But of course, in these days, these were, you know, selling a dime a dozen. You can pick this up really cheaply. All right, the next one, my copy is a reissue, and if you know, you know. It is Fraction Moonblood, the absolute cult, impossible to find original classic. This was designed by the actual vocalist Jim Beach. This has been reissued over the years, but very rarely in such an authentic reproduction of the original album cover. And this was done in conjunction with Noble Records, and apparently the story around getting it right, they sent it back so many times, and I'll show you why. It's because it's this cellophane kind of vibe going on of the moon there going behind the red cellophane, and to get it actually, you know, the actual cellophane right, that right beautiful blood red color was very, very difficult. So this reissue came out in, I think, maybe 2023 or 22 from memory. Very happy to get that. You can still get them on the secondary market reasonably cheaply, like $50. But it's so great to have an authentic reproduction of such a classic design. Right, the next one is a fantastic die-cut album cover by a band called Little Giant, and if you know them, prog rock, from the early 70s. This album, Octopus, that didn't originally come out like this. This was kind of about a year or two later. So this came out in 1972, and this version came out in 1973, and you can see up here that it was actually a radio station, Voice of America issue. It's got the little strip on the back there. But this beautiful die-cut cover of an octopus in a jar, which is really random. But this was designed by John Berg, who did thousands of album covers over his 25-year, 30-year career. And it's just a really special one to have. Great album as well. If you know it, you know it. There's my Columbia vinyl. Right, the next one is one of the most special albums I have in my collection, and that is John Cale's The Academy in Peril album cover, designed by the one and only Andy Warhol. And of course, John Cale, this was his second solo album, done with, I think it might have been the London Symphony Orchestra, I can't quite remember. He was obviously Welsh, moved to New York in the 60s, Velvet Underground, co-founded Velvet Underground with Lou Reed, and this beautiful album cover of all the Kodachrome kind of look and feel, and it opens up like this, designed by Andy Warhol. As I said, there's not much more to say about Andy Warhol. We all know who he is, and you can see the reverse of that. So this album itself is a near mint white label promo original. There are 2 white label promos you can get of this album. I got the absolute first. It is absolutely probably never been played except by me. As I said, near mint, a beautiful album. I was playing it this morning, and it's such a great kind of mostly instrumental album. And that interactive cover design, die cut cover design by Andy Warhol. All right, the next one, the gorgeous 60s and 70s folk singer Tim Buckley and his beautiful album Greetings from LA. And this is a bluesy, rocky album. If you're familiar with Tim Buckley, it was kind of a folk singer, but he really brought it. He turned it up when he needed to. And this was designed by Carl Schneckel. I think that's how you pronounce it. And he was known for his, mostly known for his album covers for Frank Zappa. And one of his most iconic album covers, the Beefheart's Trout Mask replica, which everyone's very familiar with. But was kind of this is not in his style, if you know the Zappa album covers. This was a interactive version of this album that came out that had a perforated postcard that you could pop out, which this person has done. And it was a literal postcard that popped out, and it revealed the photograph of Tim Buckley with his weird gas mask. And on the back, the kind of a replica of a postcard with basically the track lists on it. And they're quite hard to find intact. You can find a few of them with which the postcard has been popped out, but more often than not, you're getting them, they're hard to get with the postcard. So very happy to get that. This was my UK original. It was UK original on the palm tree label there. Right, the next one might be one of the most interactive covers, not dissimilar to the John Cale, designed by Peter Corriston, and that is Led Zeppelin Physical Graffiti with its interactive New York loft. And obviously there were 2 albums in here, so you could mix and match. That's kind of one look, and then you could turn it round and have another look, and then the other sleeve here, there and there. And so depending on how you slide it in or out and which cover goes where, you get various versions. And it's back, the die cuts are back and front, so you can imagine the fragility of this cover. This is a beautiful condition one, I have to say. This was sort of original, kind of. I'll show you the actual record I've got of this. An absolute classic. We all know it. Peter Corriston, as I said. He also designed Some Girls by Rolling Stone, another interactive cover. Right, the next one in the interactive album covers, and if you have recommendations that I don't show here that you think are an absolute must, tell me, because I love collecting this stuff. Put it in the comments, I'd love that, and like and subscribe while I'm at it, but more I want to know. So this is the album Styx, Cornerstone. I love Styx. I mean, they're probably not the most highly critiqued band in the world, but when you put them on, you just kind of reminded what a sort of real bangers that they had. It was one of the first albums I got actually when I was a kid. I got the Paradise Theatre. I can't remember what it was called, but it had the beautiful etching on the album. Anyway, this one's called Cornerstone. Not quite as good, but the album design is beautiful. Now, this is one of the ones that opens up halfway through the middle, which I love this. Simple to do. And then inside, the most beautiful reflective foil, sort of spacey kind of inner sleeve cover. So it's just always a surprise if you've never seen this, and you see this cover, and then you open it up and boom, it's got this kind of amazing kind of intergalactic kind of vibe going on. This one was a 1979 album cover designed by Mick Haggerty, who also designed Breakfast in America, Supertramp, Bowie albums, Let's Dance as an example. So this is a 1979, one of the very first albums that had a barcode. Actually, they just started around that era, and this is an original 1979. Right, moving on. Another female. There aren't too many women in this list, but this is the beautiful Linda Ronstadt, who I am a completist of, and this is her gorgeous album, Lush Life, which opens up like a kind of a hatbox here, in a kind of a strange kind of way. The beautiful Nelson Riddle Orchestra collaboration that she did a few albums with, and this one was designed by John Kosh and Ron Larson. And of course, John Kosh was the famous, he was the creative director for the Beatles' later albums, Let It Be, maybe Abbey Road, and did the whole creative direction for John Lennon and Yoko Ono's War Is Over campaign, and did a lot of Linda Ronstadt designs. So that is Lush Life by Linda Ronstadt. Right, the next one. I'm kind of jumping over a couple of decades here. There's a bit of a hole in my collection, which I've realised. I'm now coming into the latest century, and this absolutely beautiful album by Floating Points called Promises, and this was the collaboration. I've kind of kept it in the shrink. Actually, no, I'll take it out because it's necessary for the collaboration with Pharoah Sanders before he passed away about a year or two later. So this is from 2021, and of course, Floating Points is the electronic musician Sam Shepard, and he collaborated with the London Symphony Orchestra, brought Pharoah Sanders on board, and created this masterful, mystical, meditative album, which is an absolute journey when you put it on. It's sort of the same few notes that float in and out for the duration of the two sides, but it makes sense when you listen to it, and it is just beautiful. And the design of this album cover is sublime. So it comes with this die cut, and I love the concept of floating points, and you can see how this is being created, and the actual artwork inside. Look at that beautiful artwork inside. And that is an artist, a painting by an artist called Julie Meretru. I'm not sure how to say that. Merettu, Julie Merettu, an Ethiopian American artist, contemporary artist, and does these beautiful illustrations. And you can see kind of that perspective, sort of linear drawing, and that kind of concept around floating points, and this die cut cover. Beautiful, beautiful design. Paul Diddy was the actual designer, one of the young designers around at the moment, and just such a beautiful die cut cover from a contemporary artist and designer. And then another contemporary artist, Kacey Musgraves from 2023, I think, 2021, and this star-crossed, and I love the fact that it's got the the actual die cut, you know, broken heart that you'd see on a charm detail there. They could have left that out, but the whole point was that. And this cover was designed by Mackenzie Moore, who is another up-and-coming designer doing some really interesting album work. She's done a couple of Kacey Musgraves, but she's done a bunch of other things. She did do Kacey Musgraves' Architect apple-shaped single as well, which is beautiful, but just a lovely little detail there. And then finally, I'm ending on an absolute classic from 2023, The Cure, and this is Songs for the Lost World, and this is the Heat-reactive sleeve. I won't be able to show you, but I'll insert a video here of it that I did at the time. It was one of my favorite albums of the time. You can kind of see the image on there. But you can actually get your hand on there, and it's heat reactive when it's warm enough, and put your handprint on there. Really beautiful design, and this concept and cover design was by Robert Smith of The Cure. So we have a couple of albums here where the actual concept themselves are the artists, the actual vocal artists or songwriter artists as well. There you have it. My first video. I'm sure there'll be more lenticular videos, perfumed, lenticular album covers, perfumed albums, pop-up albums. I've got them all. But this was the interactive cover edition, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.